Hello everyone and welcome back to my Warhammer 40k guides. I am Brady and today I'd like to talk about if the start collecting boxes are worth purchasing in order to make a competitive army in 9th edition. This video is a remake of a video I did on the same topic about a year or so ago, but lots of stuff has changed since then, like the brand new edition, and also there's many more start collecting boxes than there were when I originally made that video. So I figured it's about time to update that video. Before we get into that content though, let me just say that if your goal in Warhammer 40k is just to have fun building and painting cool models while getting to roll some dice on the table, then all of these start collecting boxes are going to be worth purchasing for you based on the value of the boxes alone, since you get a decent amount of stuff in each box for the price. But if your goal is to play competitively and to attend tournaments and hopefully win, and you're on a budget and you don't want to waste too much money on units that you'll eventually discover are suboptimal and you're going to end up having to buy other units anyways to make yourself a competitive army, then this video could save you some money, since some of those start collecting boxes don't really include many units that you'd actually use in a competitive game, in my opinion. If I do say a box isn't worth purchasing in order to build a competitive army with, I will give some suggestions on which units to start with instead. And I guess that's it for this intro. So let's get into the main content of this video. So here we are on the Games Workshop website, and I'm going to go through all of these boxes with you. Also, before we get started, I just wanted to mention that these prices that you see here are Canadian prices. So to you Americans, this is going to seem pretty expensive, but to you Australians, this is going to seem incredibly cheap. So yeah, just letting you know these are Canadian prices so it doesn't confuse anybody. So let's start from top to bottom, going with start collecting Vanguard Space Marines. So the funny thing about this box is that even like 4 or 5 months ago, I would have said this box is 100% worth purchasing for a competitive army for pretty much any chapter. But currently, right now, I don't think this box is worth purchasing based off of the meta we're in and based off of the changes that 9th edition brought us. So to start out, we have the 3 suppressors. Suppressors are okay, but the main reason you brought these guys in lists like Blood Angels and Space Wolves and stuff like that was because they denied Overwatch when they killed a model in a unit. So you would shoot at a unit, kill a model, and now that unit can't Overwatch, which was really good for like Blood Angels and Space Wolves, because now you could charge into something like Centurions and not have to worry about getting Overwatched off the table. But in 9th edition, Overwatch is much less prevalent than it was in 8th edition now, because Overwatch is a stratagem that you have to pay for. So these guys they still kind of have a use, but I'm not sure if it's worth bringing them. Pretty much the only reason I bring them now is just because of the actual damage they can do on their autocannons while being a decently fast unit. The Eliminators, however, I think they've completely fallen out of the meta. Reason being is because 9th edition seems to not be so focused on characters like 8th edition was. Hero Hammer is definitely less prevalent. Big bombs that used to rely on a bunch of characters buffing up a certain unit, stuff like Grey Knights and the Possessed Bomb, those aren't really seen as much anymore either, because it's harder to make them work based off of the new detachment system. Because you kind of hurt yourself a lot by forcing yourself to bring 3 detachments in order to get a bunch of characters, because you're going to lose a ton of command points doing that. Also, because of the changes to the character keyword in 9th edition, it's a little bit harder to actually keep your characters alive as well, and you need more units in order to protect those characters. So that's probably another reason leading to people not spamming characters as much. So that's not to say that Eliminators are necessarily bad, it's just that I don't necessarily think they fit into the current meta. With that said, if someone discovers a list that is very character heavy and it starts getting around the meta more and more, then yes, Eliminators I think will make their way back. But they're kind of one of those units that's like, you only use them in very specific metas, and right now it's not their meta. Then we move on to the Infiltrators. And currently, I think Infiltrators are just overly expensive scouts. I would rather play with scouts than the Infiltrators, because Deep Strike doesn't seem to be too big right now. That could change in the future once people get a better feel for the edition and stuff like that. But yeah, I feel like they're just overcosted scouts, because scouts do pretty much the exact same thing that these guys do. The main differences being these guys have a little bit more damage potential. They're more survivable based off of the 2 wounds, but that could change in a couple months now, because Games Workshop did announce that Firstborn Marines are going to go up to 2 wounds each. I'm not sure if that includes scouts or not, but I would assume it would. And if that is the case, I would still go with scouts 100%. So basically, to summarize this entire box set, is that none of these units just fit in the current meta. That doesn't mean that these units are bad. In fact, they're all really good at what they do. It's just what they do isn't needed in this meta at the moment. So with that said, stuff that I would start with instead if I was building pretty much any Space Marine chapter is like scouts, intercessors, outriders, eradicators, And then after that, it kind of gets down to being like chapter specific. And so if you want to know what units are good in each chapter, I do have a video called How to Build a Competitive Space Marine Army. And although some of it is slightly outdated because it's based off of 8th edition, the unit section of that video that says which units are good in each army, that is still 100% correct in my opinion. So if you want to go check out that video, that's a good video to see based off of which chapter, which units you should be going for. Moving on to Chaos Space Marines and their Start Collecting box. So this may surprise a bunch of you, but I think this box is actually worth it and you should probably buy 2 boxes. Reason being is because Games Workshop already did announce that in October, there's going to be a buff to Space Marines and Chaos Space Marines, and all of the Firstborn Marines, so regular Space Marines, Tactical Marines, stuff like that, they're all going to gain an extra wound and go up to 2 wounds to match their Primaris counterparts. So that's going to mean these Chaos Space Marines are going to have 2 wounds each, and I think Chaos Space Marines with 2 wounds each are going to be pretty decent. On top of that, this box is the only way you can buy Obliterators, which is one of Chaos Space Marines' best units. They're such a heavy hitter in the army. I can't see a Chaos Space Marine never including a unit of 3 Obliterators. They're just so incredibly good. So that's mainly why I say buy 2 boxes, because then you're going to get yourself a unit of 3 Obliterators. You'll get an extra Obliterator, but you can either sell him or even buy a 3rd box, so that way you have 2 units of 3. Although the only army I think 2 units of 3 Obliterators really works in is probably like Iron Warriors, but in pretty much every other legion, I think just using a unit of 3 is all that you're going to want to do. The Venom Crawler he's okay if you want to go like a Demon Engine route. He's definitely could be used, although I do think the Mauler Fiend is slightly better, and the Mauler Fiend's only like 2 points more if I'm remembering correctly, so I'd rather go with the Mauler Fiend over this guy, so that kind of doesn't leave room for this guy. So he's definitely not the reason you buy this box, but he just happens to be there. Just think of him as an extra. The 2 Greater Possessed, they're okay as well, but with the changes that have happened to 9th edition, the Possessed Bomb isn't really all that great anymore, and even then, with the Possessed Bomb, there was better units to use than these guys. That doesn't mean these guys are bad units, it's just that I don't think that I would ever use them in any of my Chaos Space Marine lists. So mainly, the only reasons I would buy this box is the Chaos Space Marines, the Obliterators, and the Master of Possession, who can actually work incredibly well with the Obliterators. But overall though, mainly just because of the Obliterators and kind of because of the Chaos Space Marines, I would say this box is worth purchasing. If you could buy the Obliterators by themselves outside of this box, I'm pretty confident they'd be like $70 anyways, so even still, this is totally worth buying for pretty much any Chaos Space Marine Legion except for like Thousand Suns and Death Guard, because they can't currently use any of this stuff. Moving on, we have Start Collecting Demons of Slaanesh. So I'm on the fence with this, because I think Demonettes are good, because if you want to play a Slaanesh demon army, you're going to need at least 1 unit of Demonettes in order to put in your patrol. Although personally, with the list that I've been building for 9th edition, I would actually have 3 units of Demonettes, because I would bring a battalion and I think it's a vanguard. That way you can bring some Keeper of Secrets, make them Exalted Keepers, give them either the 4-up invul or the -1 to wound against shooting weapons, just depends on what you're fighting against. Going into a tournament based off what you're going to play, I think the 4-up invul is a safer bet. There's actually quite a lot of melee in this in the meta right now, and that -1 to wound on your Keeper of Secrets against shooting armies is not really going to work against those armies, but the 4-up invul just works against melee armies and shooting armies. So that's why I like the 4-up invul and the Keeper of Secrets, which you should definitely buy as well. Keeper of Secrets are incredibly good. The Seekers, I actually like 1 big unit of Seekers because they do have some new support from, I think it's the War of the Spider book that just came out not too long ago. You can actually use like Warp Surge on them, give them a 4-up invul, and then there's a stratagem from War of the Spider that I believe makes them -1 to hit, so they can be decently durable. And with the changes to how morale works as well, you're most likely not going to lose the entire unit to morale like you used to. The only thing I'm kind of about is this Chariot. The Chariot can be okay, and like, to be honest, you probably could make it fit in a decent competitive list. But personally, I just don't like it. But overall, I would still say that you could probably make it work and that these would be worth it if you're trying to build a Slaanesh demon army for competitive play. With that said, they're still only going to be like mid-tier at best, so you're still going to have a lot of losing matchups. But if you're the better player and if luck is on your side that day, you can definitely take some games off of some of the better armies in the game. Now we move on to Start Collecting Space Marines, and this is all Firstborn stuff, so like a regular Dreadnought, Tactical Marines, and a Captain in Terminator armor. So I'm kind of on the fence with this box. I think I'm gonna like the Tactical Marines once they go up to 2 wounds. It's because they have a few more options. Because when you take like intercessors, the only upgrades you can really give is I think you can give like a plasma pistol to the sergeant, and maybe like a thunderhammer or a power fist or something like that. But with Tactical Marines, you can not only do that, but you can also include like a missile launcher in the squad, or a las cannon, or a melta, which I think meltas are actually going to be pretty good based off of the rules they released as well. So I do like the Tactical Marines in here. What I don't like though is the Terminator Captain. I don't think there's other characters that you're going to want to use based off of your Space Marine chapter. For example, if you're playing Blood Angels, you're probably going to want something like a Librarian Dreadnought or a Smash Captain. If you're playing White Scars, you're probably going to want a Khan on Bike or Kasaro Khan. Basically, you're going to want named characters over this guy, and I don't see any reason to include a Terminator Captain. When it comes to the Venerable Dreadnought, although they did get a buff this edition, I still think this edition is all about running a ton of infantry. I do think we're going to see some vehicle lists. For example, like Death Guard has a stupid list right now that is just a bunch of demon engines. But the Venerable Dreadnought, although again he did get buffed, I still think this is a infantry based meta, except for a couple of armies. So I think he could be okay, but there's other things I'd rather buy over this guy. For example, like aggressors. Aggressors are stupidly good right now, especially in certain chapters like Ultramarines and Salamanders, but they can work in pretty much any chapter. And then like Eradicators are way better anti-tank than this guy's going to be as well. So yeah, I kind of don't feel like this box is worth it. I do think the Tactical Marines are worth it, which is honestly something I never thought I'd hear myself say. But again, that's only because they're going up to 2 wounds. But I don't think these 2 units are worth it, so therefore I don't think that this box set is going to be worth purchasing if you want to build a competitive army right off the hop. Then we move on to start collecting Gene Stealer cults, and this box I can say is definitely 100% worth it. Everything in this box is something you would see in a competitive list. You still need those bodies to be able to grab those objectives with objectives secured. Even though they are not that durable, in this edition does favor elite armies a little bit. You can still go and stop the elite armies from scoring because you'll normally have more models than they will. While stuff like your Ridge Runners are just getting damage off with their pretty decent shooting that they come with, especially with the buff in 9th edition now that they can move and shoot without penalty. So I believe there's a combo too that you use with them and the sniper rifle character. I can't remember his name. He's on a bike and he has a sniper rifle. He can give them all like +1 to hit against something. So you can actually have all of these vehicles hitting at a better ballistic skill than they would have in 8th edition, which is really good. So yeah, overall, I think Gene Stealer Cult, at least this box set, is definitely worth starting with. Next, we have the Start Collecting Thousand Suns. And again, surprisingly to some of you, I actually think that this box is going to be worth it. Armon is hands down the best character in Thousand Suns, except for maybe Magnus. They do have their pros and cons. Like, for example, Armon can't be shot at if he's hiding behind this stuff, whereas Magnus can. But Magnus is just a giant beat stick, and if you get to go first, you can make him -1 with a 3-up invul, and that's super hard to remove off the table. Overall, I do still like Armon. He's still incredibly good. Rubric Marines, since they're going up to 2 wounds each, I think they're going to see a lot more play than they used to. And Rubric Marines actually have some good stratagems in their Psychic Awakening book as well. So when that buff comes in, I think we might actually see more Rubric Marines in the meta, and Thousand Suns basically spamming Rubric Marines. The Zangors are okay. I don't think they're spammable, but maybe like 1 unit of 20. I don't think they're necessarily spammable, but they are better than Cultists in my opinion, and they're only slightly more expensive than Cultists. So that's essentially how I would use them, is basically don't use Cultists, use the Zangors instead. If you're not bringing Magnus in your list, then you do have a decent option of taking like 20 Zangors as like your giant screen, because then you can buff them with -1 to hit in a 4-up invul, and it's actually pretty decent for the price you pay. But if you do bring Magnus, then yeah, you don't want to do that, because that big unit is just going to get annihilated because all of your buffs are going to go on Magnus instead. But yeah, overall though, this box is definitely worth it. Probably not currently, but again, in a couple of months when the Rubric Marines go up to 2 wounds each, I definitely think this is going to be worth it. So moving on to the Start Collecting Primaris Space Wolves. I do think this box could be okay, and you could make a pretty decent army out of this stuff. But personally, I would rather go in a different direction for Space Wolves, because I think Incursors and Assault Intercessors better suit Space Wolves rather than the regular Intercessors. And I think you have better units for your elite options, such as like Wolfen. I'd rather bring Wolf in than bring the aggressors, to be honest, at least in Space Wolves. And then you have better characters other than this guy as well. Stuff like Ragnar Blackmane, who's probably one of the best characters in the game in my opinion. Rune Priests, Wolf Priests, there's just better options overall. So I'm not going to say this box isn't worth it, because I definitely think someone could make a pretty good list out of this stuff for Space Wolves, but personally it's not the route that I would take with Space Wolves. And I would rather go with those options that I just previously mentioned. To be honest, for Space Wolves, you're probably better off, at least in my opinion, just buying like the Indominus stuff from the new Indominus box set, or I guess Games Workshop has these other new starter box sets that have Indominus stuff in them. And yeah, basically everything that's in Indominus, all of those units are incredibly good in Space Wolves. So I would rather buy that than buy this box set, to be honest. Moving on to start collecting Adeptus Mechanicus. You get a Tech Priest Dominist, either some Rangers or Vanguard, depending on how you want to build them, and a Dune Rider. And yeah, this is definitely all stuff that you're going to want to start an AdMech list with. You still want those troops that are going to have objectives secured, and the transport definitely helps get those troops to where they need to be, whether it's to get them in rapid fire range or get them on an objective. And yeah, and then the Dune Rider itself, after it delivers its cargo wherever it's going, the Dune Rider can also run off and go grab an objective somewhere that's not going to be contested by your opponent. It also comes with a decent amount of DACA as well, so yeah, it's a nice little gunboat to have. No matter what Forge World you're playing, this is definitely a box that you're going to want to start with. Moving on to start collecting Deathwatch. This box can be worth purchasing if you can find the bits for Storm Shields and Combi Bolters, because that's what veterans work incredibly well with, especially if they're going up to 2 wounds. Imagine 2 wound veterans with a Storm Shield and their Combi Bolters with their special issue ammunition. That just sounds disgusting to me. The Dreadnought, however, is, I don't know, I think he's okay, but I think the army has better options, kind of like how I was saying with the regular Space Marine box set. And Watchmaster Artemis, you can use him as himself or even just a regular Watchmaster, which is also really good. So this box is kind of worth it just because you get the Watchmaster plus the Marines, and the Dread is kind of just like extra, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. So overall, I would say this is worth it, but you're probably going to need to buy some extra bits. I don't know off the top of my head if it comes with enough Storm Bolters and Storm Shields for the entire unit, but if it doesn't, then yeah, you're probably going to want to buy some of those, because that is 100% the way I would play my veterans in Deathwatch. And then from there, you just spam more veterans with Storm Bolters and Storm Shields, and then maybe add in some heavy hitting units that can deal with the tanks. Maybe like a Smash Captain, maybe some aggressors. So now we move on to start collecting Space Communists. I mean, Tau Empire. And yeah, this box set does look pretty good. You get yourself some Fire Warriors, which are going to be your troops choice for screening and grabbing objectives. You get your Ethereal, which is still pretty decent in the army because he has a bunch of different auras that he can provide for his army. Stuff like a 6-up Feel No Pain, which can be pretty helpful. You have Crisis Suits, which are incredibly good in Farside Enclaves, and if you play a Sept that isn't Farside Enclaves, like for example regular Tau Sept, you can use them as commanders if you really want. Although in the current detachment system, you probably only want 2 commanders at most, and if you're playing Tau Sept, you probably want Shadow Sun anyways. So in that case, yeah, maybe if you're playing Farside Enclaves, this is worth, but if you're playing Tau Sept, maybe not. The drones are cool too, but based off of like the shield drone changes, normally I would have said convert all of these to be shield drones. But with the shield drone changes and their points going up, it's not worth spamming them like you used to. So I still think bringing a couple units of drones is still good, but yeah, it's definitely not like an 8th edition where the army was 3 Riptides and 1,000,000 drones. So yeah, I guess to just finish it off and to just say, if you play Farside Enclaves, this is definitely worth. If you play Tau Sept, this is kind of worth. If you play anything else, this is probably still worth it to start off with. You just got to add in like some Riptides. Riptides pretty much work in any of the Septs in my opinion. Maybe even like some Stealth Suits. I've been seeing them get a decent amount of play, and they seem to be pretty decent now as well. So yeah, I guess overall this could be worth it for pretty much any Sept you want to play. Now we're on to start collecting Tyranids, and I don't think this box is worth it. The only thing I really like from this box is the Gene Stealers and the Broodlord. The Trigon or the Moloch, you can build it either way. I still don't really like those in Tyranids right now. To be honest, I just don't really like Tyranids in general. I think they're one of like the lower tier armies, maybe mid tier at best. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure what to do with Tyranids yet. I haven't had much testing with them because I don't really play with people that play Tyranids all that often because they gave them up for other armies. But based off of what I do know, I still think that Gene Stealers are incredibly good. The Broodlord can be good with the Gene Stealers, but this unit is kind of just like, it sticks out like a sore thumb to me. So I guess if you just want this model just because you think it's cool and you just want to paint it and whatever, then yeah, you could definitely make something competitive out of these two and maybe throw in him. Like I've seen some tournaments in 8th edition make use of like I forget which version it is, but it's the one that pops up and does mortal wounds to stuff that's around it. So I can't honestly say that it's completely garbage, but it's just not for me. It's not something that I would include in a Tyranid list if I were to make it. So I guess take that as you will and decide if you think the box is worth it, because depending on price, I guess it is kind of worth it because you kind of get this guy for free. And then these units are definitely going to be used, or they're units that I would definitely use. So yeah, I guess in that case, the box is worth it just because you kind of get this guy for free. Moving on to start collecting Demons of Khorne. So the only thing I kind of like from this box set is Bloodletters, but the thing is they don't necessarily fit into the meta right now because of Auspex Scan from Space Marines, because the only way to make Bloodletters work, in my opinion, is to have like a big bomb of them deep strike in using the Banner of Blood to get a 3d6 charge. But if you do that and you deep strike in near like a unit that you really want to kill with those Bloodletters, because they hit like a truck, they're going to kill pretty much any infantry unit in the game they touch. The problem is with that though, is that they'll get Auspex scanned and probably lose a bunch of them. And yeah, and then they're kind of not that great at that point. Then when it comes to the Blood Crushers, the Blood Crushers suffer from the same problems as Thunderwolf Cavalry, except they're nowhere near as good as Thunderwolf Cavalry, because they are cavalry, they can't walk through walls, so it's really easy for an opponent to like hide behind a wall and force you to try to run around while they can just run through it with like their aggressors or something and then murder you. So there's that. Plus they're only toughness 4 with a 5-up invul. That's not that good of a stat line at all. They're just like regular Bloodletters. They're very glass cannon like. And then the Blood Throne is okay, but personally I'd rather run just like a Demon Prince or even a Bloodthirster over this guy. So yeah, overall, I don't really think this is worth it. And to be honest, playing Khorne Demons in general, I don't necessarily think is worth it. If you want to go like, if you're playing competitively to win the whole tournament, then don't play Khorne Demons. But if you're playing Khorne Demons to get best in faction and be the best Khorne Demon player out there, then yeah, by all means, you can probably make something somewhat work and go like 3-3 at a 6-round event. But overall though, I don't know, I don't really like a lot of this stuff. I think Khorne and probably Tzeentch are the worst out of all the demon armies. So yeah, overall I don't think this box is worth it, unless again if you're just trying to go for best in faction and you just want to be the best Khorne demon player out there, then yeah, then it could be worth it. But if you're trying to win events in total, then I would recommend not playing Demons of Khorne, at least not at this point in time, and instead play another army that meets some of your requirements. Maybe even like Chaos Space Marines. You'd have an easier time with Chaos Space Marines than you would with Khorne Demons, in my opinion. Moving on to start collecting Astra Militarum or Imperial Guard. And this box 100% is worth it. Tank commanders are still incredibly good. I think regular Leman Russes, some of them can be pretty decent as well. Although I do think they're kind of, regular Leman Russes at least, are a little bit overcosted because I think Games Workshop is compensating too much for the buffs that vehicles got in this edition. But tank commanders overall, it's still good to run like 2 or 3 of them in your list. The infantry, I think, they're gonna always be an Imperial Guard. You're always gonna want to take like 6+ units of infantry. The heavy weapons team is nice as well because you can throw them inside one of these, or if you buy 3 of these boxes, you can make a heavy weapons team that you kind of just hide in the back and shoot stuff with either like las cannons or missile launchers or whatever your preferred weaponry is. Although personally, I'd probably go with las cannons. And then you'd have yourself 3 tank commanders and 30 infantry to start out. And like I said, you're probably going to want to build up to at least 60 infantry, although personally, I like to sit around like 80 infantry, mainly because this game is all about objectives now, and you're going to want those infantry to run out and swarm objectives, just so you have so many bodies on them that it's hard for your opponent to remove you off the objective, or even so that A lot of elite armies are in the meta right now. So let's say your opponent moves 5 intercessors onto an objective. You don't even need to kill those intercessors. Just send 10 of your guys over there with move, and now you're going to be holding the objective and stopping your opponent from scoring on their turn. So yeah, overall, I really like this box. I'd even buy 3. You'll get yourself some extra commissars, which in my opinion is kind of useless. I don't think I've ever used a commissar in all of 8th edition, except for maybe at like the beginning where he was really good. But towards the end of 8th edition, he's kind of and in 9th edition, I honestly feel like he's kind of pointless. But you could, in friendly games, use him as a company commander instead if you really wanted to. And maybe even some tournaments would allow you to do it as well, but it's up to the TO's discretion if they want to allow you to use your commissar as a company commander. But yeah, again, overall, this box is definitely worth it. Possibly buy 3 and just sell your commissars. Moving on to start collecting craft worlds. So this box, I have mixed feelings about, but I'm leaning towards it's not worth it. The main thing is I like the Farseer. Farseer's good, and he's like a staple, whether he's on foot or he's on a jet bike. Both of those options are really good in Eldar. It just depends on how you're building your list and how fast you want it to move and stuff. Like if your list is primarily a bunch of fast units, you're probably going to want the Farseer on a jet bike. But if your list is like infantry inside of Wave Serpents or something like that, then yeah, the guy on foot would probably be better, because then he can hang out in a Wave Serpent with one of those units of infantry. The Wraith Lord is okay, but I do think the army has better options. The Wraith Guard, which can then be turned, they can be assembled as Wraith Blades instead. I actually kind of like Wraith Guard and Wraith Blades in the new edition. Wraith Blades, because you can give them the shields that give them a 4-up invul, and they're pretty tough and have a decent amount of wounds, so they're a decent unit to go like try to grab an objective mid-board, and if your opponent gets close to them, well then you chop them up a little bit. Although their damage output it's okay, but I do think it's kind of lacking. And the Wraith Guard have a pretty good amount of damage potential as well, and if you play it right with terrain and hide them while going up the board, then yeah, they can be pretty decent. The Warwalker, however, I think is it's all right, but not the best. So if anything, if I was buying this box, it'd be for these 2 units, and these 2 I wouldn't even think about, to be honest. So I guess I'm gonna say this box isn't necessarily worth it. Moving on, we're gonna have the Start Collecting Demons of Tzeentch, and I do think Pink Horrors are okay. But with the current meta of elite armies and 2-up saves and all that stuff, their shooting isn't nearly as good as it used to be when the meta was just a ton of hordes. Flamers, however, are kind of okay. Screamers are kind of eh. The Chariot is kind of eh. So I don't know. The only way I would buy this, to be honest with you, is if I really just wanted to play Tzeentch Demons for fun. I don't think I'd play them competitively. Or if I was playing Thousand Suns and wanted to do something gimmicky like summoning in demons, then at least you have some options of different demons you can summon based off what you need. So yeah, just based off of the meta alone, I don't think that this is worth it. And to be honest, I don't think like Demons of Tzeentch at all is really worth playing that much, in my opinion. I would much rather play like Slaanesh demons, which in my opinion I think are probably the best, and then maybe Nurgle after that. Now we have the Start Collecting Demons of Nurgle, and just like the last video, this box is still pretty worth it, mainly if you just want to play like a Demons of Nurgle list. I do think bringing like a couple of some Great Unclean ones, some Plague Bearers, and the Nurglings, yeah, those are all still really good units, although Plague Bearers might be slightly overcosted now, but with everything else in the game going up in points and Plague Bearers staying the same as they were in 8th edition, I think they're fine now. They are somewhat nerfed though, because you can't make a unit of 30 of them -2 to hit anymore, because they used to get -1 because you have more than 20 models in the unit, and then on top of that you put Miasma Pestilence on them to make them -2. That doesn't work in 9th edition anymore, but even still, they're still quite durable, especially if you were to use Warp Surge on them, and then you can just save that -1 to hit for something else, like one of your greater demons or something like that. So with this box, you could definitely make a decent army for 9th edition. The thing is, though, is the way I would play like a straight Nurgle demon army in 9th edition is just go like camp the center of the board and just not allow your opponent to pass, and you just win on holding more objectives essentially, which is kind of a boring playstyle for most people. So if you really want to play Nurgle demons, your best bet, at least right now in the current meta, is to actually play Death Guard and use their Demon Engine build, which is like top tier in my opinion. And even that build can make use of like Nurglings as their troop choice and a Poxbringer, who can take the spell that like heals a friendly Nurgle demon unit, which does work on some Death Guard units if they have the demon keyword, which all of their demon engines do. So yeah, if you want to play Nurgle demons, just know that your army isn't going to hit too hard, but it is going to be incredibly durable, and your game plan for the most part, in my opinion, is just going to be to camp the objectives and just kind of stop your opponent from getting on the objectives, which again can be kind of boring. But yeah, if that sounds something cool to you and something that you want to do, then by all means, this box will definitely help you get there. Moving on to start collecting Drukhari. Towards the end of 8th edition, this box set was definitely worth it, but now in 9th edition, I actually don't like Cabals or Cults as much as I used to, and I think Covens are the way to go for Drukhari now, which to me is unfortunate, because I absolutely hate Covens. I didn't get into Drukhari to play Frankenstein stuff, I got into Drukhari to play with my Dark Elves. But yeah, I don't think these units hit hard enough to take on some of the elite units in the game. I don't think they're durable enough to camp objectives so you can win that way. And so the only answer for Drukhari to be able to do both of those is to bring Coven stuff like Talos and stuff like that. Although you don't want your entire army to be Talos, I could still see an army having like a Coven and a Cult and a Cabal, making use of like the 3 patrols, so that way you still get your 12 command points, but you got your 3 different detachments. That's honestly probably the route that I would take with Drukhari, now that I've had some testing with like my Venom spam and stuff, which by the way, Venom spam just, it doesn't work. not in this meta, not with 7 Death Guard demon engines running around. No, it just doesn't work. So yeah, I would only buy this box if you're playing casually, but if you're trying to play competitively, go with Coven stuff first, and then add in a couple of Cabal units to be able to get your Blackheart in there for Agents of Vect. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to say that this box set isn't worth it. Now let's go over start collecting Blood Angels. So I don't think this box set is going to be worth it, because I think Blood Angels have much more optimal builds that they can go for. Sure, Tactical Marines are getting that buff, and they could be somewhat useful, and I'm sure we'll see some lists doing well with Tactical Marines and Blood Angels, but I think going for something like Assault Intercessors would be better as your troops choice. Then when it comes to the character, this Captain and Terminator armor, it's the same thing as the other Space Marine box that we went over. I think you're better off bringing like a Smash Captain or a Librarian Dreadnought or something like that. So that kind of takes this guy out of the equation. Assault Intercessors kind of take these guys out of the equation. And then the Bale Predator, I don't know. It probably could be okay. It's not my style, and it's not what I would use in Blood Angels. But I think you could include 1, 2, or possibly even 3 of these things into a Blood Angels list and get some decent use out of it, only because of the buffs to vehicles. I'm only saying that, no, not knowing what this thing actually costs. But if it were to cost like 200 points or more, then definitely don't use it. But I mean, if it's like 150, 160 points, then yeah, this could be a pretty decent pickup. But normally for Blood Angels, what I think works best is taking a couple like big squads of Sanguinary Guard that run up the table, leading your Librarian Dreadnought and Smash Captain into battle. Maybe even some Death Company that deep strike in and just one-shot something and then probably die the following turn. With them going up to 2 wounds though, they'll definitely be a lot better. With that said though, Sanguinary Guard will most likely go up to 3 wounds, which will make them even nastier. And it actually kind of scares me thinking about Sanguinary Guard with 3 wounds. So yeah, overall, I guess I'm just going to have to say that I don't think this is worth it, and instead I would actually buy like kind of like I said with the Space Wolves, buy yourself the Indomitus box set, because you'll make use of the Assault Intercessors. They'll be really good. The Outriders can be pretty decent as well. They'll be like a nice little unit that you can just kind of throw away to go grab yourself. It's not called Recon, but whatever the Games Workshop secondary is that works like Recon. I always forget its name. I just keep calling it Recon. It's the one where you have like a different unit in 3 different table quarters for 2 points, or a different unit in 4 different table quarters for 3 points. Yeah, the Outriders are really good for that. And then the Eradicators, they're just absolutely stupid right now, and they work in like every chapter. You just throw in like 2 or 3 units of them as like your anti-tank that just pop in and delete 1 or 2 vehicles a turn. They're so good. So yeah, I'd rather go with Indomitus for Blood Angels rather than buying this box set. Moving on to start collecting Space Puppies. So kind of like the Blood Angels that we just went over, I think you could make something decent out of the stuff in this box, although it's not the route that I would take. I personally don't really like Thunderwolf Cavalry, because they're cavalry, they're not infantry, they can't go through walls of buildings, so it's incredibly easy for your opponent to outmaneuver you and make it so that they get the charge off and not you. And although they're quite durable, a lot of armies come with enough firepower to just shoot everything into them and make them gone turn 1. So yeah, although Thunderwolf Cavalry are still good, I'm not going to say they're bad, they're just not my personal preference, because again, mainly just because of the issues of having to run around walls rather than just running through them like infantry would. Then when it comes to the infantry, the Grey Hunters are okay. but I just think I would rather bring like assault intercessors. I think that's still much better than bringing Grey Hunters. But Blood Claws, I do think Blood Claws could be okay, especially if they go up to 2 wounds. They'd actually be pretty nasty. So yeah, I guess if you build and use these guys as Blood Claws, then great. This guy, however, I wouldn't use him. I'd use like Ragnar as my HQ instead, and maybe like a Rune Priest or something like that. But yeah, just for these guys alone, I'd rather just buy them separately. But like with the last Blood Angels box we just went over, instead of purchasing this box, I would actually get the Indomitus box instead. Because yeah, everything in that box also works incredibly well in Space Wolves for the reason I gave for Blood Angels. The Assault Intercessors, they're good in melee. Space Wolves have a lot of melee bonuses. The Outriders are really good to grab you Recon or whatever Games Workshop calls it nowadays. And the Eradicators are just incredibly good at deleting vehicles that you're having a hard time getting to because their screen is in the way and you got to charge through their screen in order to get to those vehicles or those elite units that are hiding behind the infantry screen. So yeah, I would much rather go with Indomitus over purchasing this box set, although this box set is still pretty decent. Moving on to start collecting Militarum Tempestus. This box is definitely worth it if you want to play a Scion army. The Torox is pretty good because it hits on 3s, and now with the buffs to vehicles, it's going to remain hitting on 3s even if it moves, which is incredibly good. And the Scions themselves, although I wouldn't play Scions like as a mono army, I would include them with regular Astra Militarum, to be honest with you, because I'd rather be able to like deep strike Scions in and get like a beta strike off with them. I think they're a little bit too expensive compared to regular guard to just be running up the board. But I mean, it could work. I have seen some decent Scion armies in 8th edition, and I'm sure that transfers over to 9th edition as well, especially with some of the buffs that they got to some of their transports. And yeah, I think that Scions could be good. But yeah, overall, I definitely think that this box set is going to be worth it if you're building a primarily Scion army, or even if you want to bring them in as allies to like regular Astra Militarum, like if you're playing Cadia or Catachan or something like that. And then last but not least, we have the green skins with start collecting orcs. So in 8th edition, 100% I would have said this box is worth it because you're basically just getting this, I believe it's a Death Dread, you're just getting him for free, and then all of this stuff you'd be able to make use of. But in 9th edition, with the way things work and how the meta seems to be favoring elite armies, I don't think the way we used to play orcs is that viable anymore, which was basically like spamming a ton of boys and a bunch of bodies. I actually think going a more elite route with stuff like war bikers or even like their Megatrack scrap jets and stuff like that, like all the vehicle stuff, like all the race car looking stuff basically is really good. It used to not be that great in 8th because there was better options, but now based off of how 9th edition is working and what the meta is looking like, it's looking like it's going to be favoring more elite style orcs. So with that said, this could still be kind of worth it to purchase, but to be honest, I would rather start somewhere else. Because to be honest, if I were to make an orc list currently right now, I wouldn't be using any of this stuff in it. I would just build straight up like an Outrider or something like that and just try to fit a bunch of like vehicles in it and maybe like 1 unit of boys or something like that that can go inside like a battle wagon or something like that. But currently with the list that I've seen working in the meta right now and based off of how the meta seems to be going, yeah, I don't think, because like the Pain Boy, he's only good when you're spamming a ton of infantry to be able to make use of his 6-up Feel No Pain. If you're only bringing 1 unit of like 20 boys or something like that, then he's definitely not worth it. The knobs, they're only kind of worth it if you have a bunch of boys, so you can throw a knob in each squad. But again, if you're only bringing like 1 squad of boys, you don't need that many knobs. So the only thing really worth it in this box, in my opinion, is the boys. That's it. So overall, yeah, I don't really like this box set, which is unfortunate because boys were like, they're like the face of orcs. Like that's what you think of when you think of orcs. But yeah, I don't think they're gonna cut it for the meta right now. So overall, I guess I'm gonna have to say that this box set isn't worth it. And instead, I would just buy any of the elite orc stuff, like war bikes, stuff that works with like the war trike guy. Basically anything that works with him is actually pretty decent in orcs right now. So I would go with that instead. And I guess that's about it for this video. I think I went over every start collecting box and gave you all my my basic thoughts on them. I didn't want to go too in depth with every army because then this video would be like 9 hours long and I don't want to do that. And I'm pretty sure you don't want to sit there through a 9-hour video either. But if you do have any questions for me or anything like that on if you want more of my opinions or you just want me to go a little bit more in depth for each army, then feel free to ask down below in the comments and I'll respond to you when I can find the time to. I still read all the comments on my channel, although I don't respond to all of them because honestly some of them I don't even know what to say back. But I still do read all the comments, so thank you for commenting on my channel because it does help with the YouTube algorithm gods as well. But yeah, I just wanted to put out a quick short video to help out some new players in deciding whether or not they wanted to buy these boxes or if they wanted to start somewhere else in the hobby. And I hope that the information that I gave in this video is enough to help you do that. But anyways, I guess that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more Warhammer 40k content like this. And again, if you have any questions or need any help with anything regarding Warhammer 40k, please feel free to comment down below. Also, if you're a fan of the channel and you enjoy the content I produce, I would like to ask that you check me out on Patreon. Patreon is the main source of income for the channel and it's what allows me to make these videos for you guys. For as little as $5 a month, you can gain access to the Almost Pro Gaming Discord server where you can chat with myself and over 130 other patrons to learn about the game and strategies and tactics and list building. So it's a great resource for new players that are just getting into the game and need some help, but it's also a pretty decent resource for veteran players as well since we do have multiple patrons in the channel that have either won or done well at major or GT events. There's also other tiers on Patreon as well that include stuff like custom list building, so if you think that list building is a little too difficult for you and you need some help with it, I can just build a list for you. And there's also personalized coaching as well, so if you need a little bit more help that's more one-on-one, I can definitely help out with that as well. And again, Patreon is the main source of income for the channel. It's what keeps my lights on and food in my belly. So yeah, I appreciate all of my patrons and all the support that I get through that website. With that said, thanks to my past and current patrons. You guys and gals are awesome. Without you guys, this channel wouldn't be a thing. And thanks to all you regular viewers as well. We recently got the channel up to 30,000 subscribers, and to be honest, I never thought we'd ever get there, so it's pretty surreal to see that number when I check out my YouTube channel. So yeah, I guess I'm glad you guys like the content, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy wargaming!